Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Chaitanya Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Bolo Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram. Hare Yaraya Namah, Krishna Jadavaya Namah, Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namah, Gopal Govindaram Shri Madhusudan, Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan, Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita, Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita, Shri Rupa Sanatan Vataraguna, Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Haribo, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Premanande. Jai Vishwapara Paramhansa Prabhupada Sutara Sarasi Srimad His Divine Grace Abhochanavina Bhakti Viranta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Pratishtha Viviti Samstapakachar Vaishnava Siramani Patita Pavana Srila Prabhupada Ji Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Patitu Dhari Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhakta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Guna Sadgoswami Prabhu Ki Jai. नाम आचार्य शील हरिदास ठाकुर जी की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसरि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। जय परम दयाल श्री नित्यानंद प्रभु की जय। प्रेम नाम संकीर्तन एक जनाक प्रेम पुरुषोत्तम श्री सच्चिदानंद श्रीमन गौरांग चैतन्य महाप्रभु गौर हरि महावृनय अवतार की जय। गौल केर प्रमधान हरि नाम संकीर्तन जय की जय। जुग धर्म Hare Krishna Mahamantra ki jai. Brihad Danga Translator Book Distribution Seva ki jai. Shishya Radha Krishna Gopa Kupna Radha Kun Syama Kun Giriraj Govardhan ki jai. Shri Braja Bhumi Vrindavan Mathura Dham ki jai. The Lordship Shishya Radha Nilamadhava ki jai. Shishya Maya Purnavadip Eka Chakra Dham ki jai. Parama Karuna Shishya Gaur Nitai ki jai. Shri Purushottama Ketra Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai. Shri Shri Jagannath Swami Baladev Prabhu Smaswara Devi Sudarshan Chakra Shnanan Yatra Mahotsava ki jai. Shri Shri Sitaram Lakshman Bhakta Hanuman ji ki jai. Jaganga Mai Jamuna Mai ki jai. Tulsi Maharani Vrindi Devi Bhakti Devi ki jai. Shri Mati Radharani ki jai. Shamaveta Bhakta Vrindi ki jai. Nitai Gaur Hari Pramanandi Haribo. All glory to the assembly bodies. All glory to the assembly bodies. All glory to the assembly bodies. All glories. All glories. All glories to Shri Shri Guru Shri Gauranga.
Hari Bol. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Pralad Lad Daine.
Pralad Lad Daine.
Hiranyakashi Purvasad. Shilatankana Kalaye.
Shilatankana Kalaye.
Ito Narsingha Parato Narsingha.
Ito Narsingha Parato Narsingha.
Yato Yato Yami Tato Narsingha.
Yato Yato Yami Tato Narsingha.
Bahe Narsingha Hirdaye Narsingha.
Bahe Narsingha Hirdaye Narsingha.
Narsingha Madim Sharanam Prapade.
Narsingha Madim Sharanam Prapade.
Tav Kar Kamal Vare Nakam Adbhuta Shringam. Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Bringa. Keshavadirta Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadish Hare. Jaya Jagadish Hare.
Jaya Jagadish Hare. Baba Kara Kamala Vare Nakam Adbhuta Shringam. Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Bringa. Kesavadirta Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadish Hare. Jaya Jagadish Hare. Jaya Jagadish Hare.
Jaya Narsingha Dev. Jaya Narsingha Dev. Jaya Narsingha Dev. Jaya Narsingha Dev.
Jaya Narsingha Dev. Narsingha Dev. Narsingha Dev. Jaya Narsingha Dev.
Jaya Bhakta Prahlad. Jaya Bhakta Prahlad. Jaya Bhakta Prahlad. Jaya Prahlad Maharaj.
Jaya Bhakta Prahlad. Bhakta Prahlad. Bhakta Prahlad. Jaya Prahlad.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. 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 Prabhupada.
Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada.
बोल नरसिंह भगवान की जय, भक्त प्रहलाद की जय, गुरुदेव महाराज की जय, प्रभुपाद महाराज की जय।
Shri Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnavakti Praridevi Satavatai Namaha Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnavakti Praridevi Satavatai Namaha Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnavakti Praridevi Satavatai Namaha Srimati Tulasi Maharani Vrindadevi ki Jai.
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्णा प्रेयसी नमो नमः
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्णा प्रेयसी नमो नमः
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha
राधा कृष्णा सेवा पावो ए अभिलाषी
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Abhilasi
राधा कृष्णा सेवा पावो ए अभिलाषी
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Abhilasi
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्णा प्रेयसी नमो नमः
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha
जे तुम्हारा शरण लो तारा वंचा पूरा न हो
Tomara Sharanala Tarvancha Purna
कृपा कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावन वासी
कृपा करे करतरे वृंदावनवासी
मोराए अभिलाष विलास कुंज दियो वास
मोराए विलास कुंज दियवा
नयने हरिबो सदा जुगल रूपरासी
नयने सदा जुगल रूपरासी
এই নিবেদনা ধারো সাখির অনুগাতা করো
Sakirayano gatakaro
সেবাধিকারা দিয়ে করো নিজদাসী
Sevayade kara diye karani jadasi
दीना कृष्ण दासे कोई এই জিন মোরা হই
Dina Krishna dase ka na mora
শ্রী রাধা গোবিন্দা প্রেমে সদা জিনা ভাসি
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadaye Navasi
শ্রী রাধা গোবিন্দা প্রেমে সদা জিনা ভাসি
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadaye Navasi
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्णा प्रेयसी नमो नमः
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namah
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे
Rani Kani Sapapani Brahma Hatyani Kanisa Tani Tani Pranasanti Pradachina Pade Pade
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
Kani Kani Sapapani Brahma Hatyani Kanisa Tani Tani Pranasanti Pradachina Pade Pade
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
Kani Kani Sapapani Brahma Hatyani Kanisa Tani Tani Pranasanti Pradachina Pade Pade
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
Kani Kani Sapapani Brahma Hatyani Kanisa Tani Tani Pranasanti Pradachina Pade Pade
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani.
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani.
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi.
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi.
Nityai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nityai Gaura Hari Bol, Nityai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nityai Gaura Hari Bol. श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंदा देवी की जय.
Shri Vrindaya Tulasi Devai, Priyaya Kesava Satya, Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavatai Namaha. Vrindaya Tulasi Devai, Priyaya Kesava Satya, Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavatai Namaha. Vrindaya Tulasi Devai, Priyaya Kesava Satya, Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavatai Namaha. Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai jai. Oh Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna, whoever takes shelter of you as wishes fulfilled. Bestow your mercy upon him, you make me a resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that you also give me a residence as the Lord of Shri Vrindavan Dharam. That within my vision I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me enjoy the talent dances of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own next servant. These very fallen and lowly servant Krishna praise. May I always sing love Shri Radha and Govind. Shri Mati Tulsi Maharani. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Krishna Ki Jai. Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Baudha Yasavasati
Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Gaur Krishna. Glory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtanam, which cleanses the heart, holy dust accumulated for years, and extinguishes the fire of conditional life with repeated births and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large. God is praised rays at the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we're always anxious. O my Lord, the holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings. And thus you have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names you have invested all your transcendental energies. There is not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of cosmos, you enable us to easily approach you by your names. But I'm so unfortunate I have no attraction for them. When I chant for the name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, think of oneself lower than straw on the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the name constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your cause and devotional service birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other I am falling in this ocean of birth and death. Please bring me out from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name?
When will my voice choke up, and when will the hairs on my body stand on end at the recitation of your holy name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I feel all vacant in the world in your absence.
I know no one but Krishna
is
as my Lord, and he shall remain
so,
even if it hundreds me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally.
Shri Chaitanya Sastakam Ki Jai.
There are 10 offenses in the matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that must be avoided. They are
the devotees who dedicate their lives to propagating the holy names of the Lord. They consider the names of demigods like Lord Shiva or Lord Rama to be equal to independent names of Lord Vishnu. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. To blaspheme the Vedic literature or literature in pursuance to the Vedic version. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna as imagination. To give some interpretation on the holy name of the Lord. To commit sinful activities of the strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in the Vedas as fruitive activities or karmakanda.
9.
To instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name. To not have complete faith in the chanting of the holy name, and to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions in this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success, Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just like desire trees, they can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vanchakalpatarabhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Vaishnava Thakur ki jai. Gauravani Pracharini Devasesa Sunnivari Koskati. Srimad Bhagavatam Grantaraj ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Janmadhyasya yato nivayad itaratascha tesva vigyaswarat.
Janmadhyasya yatam vayaditaratascha tesva vigyaswarat.
Tene Brahma Hridaya Adhikavaye Muyanti Yat Surayaha.
Tene Brahma Hridaya Adhikavaye Muyanti Yat Surayaha.
Tejo Varimedam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargo Mesha.
Tejo Varimedam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargo Mesha.
Damna Svena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi.
Dhamna Svena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi.
O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
O all-pervading personality of
I
Godhead.
offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute
And the
truth.
primeval cause of all
And
causes.
the primeval cause of all causes.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universe.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universe.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all
He is
manifestations.
directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond
It
him.
is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of
It
Brahmacharya,
is she only who first imparted Vedic knowledge unto the heart of
the
Brahma.
original living being.
The original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By him even the great sages and demigods are placed into
As
illusion.
one is bewildered by the illusory representation
As one is bewildered by the illusory representation
of water seen on fire or land seen on water.
of waters in the fire, of lands in the water.
Only because of him do the material universes,
Only because of him do the material universe.
temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature,
Temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of nature.
appear factual although they are unreal.
Appear factual, although they are
I
not.
therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna,
I therefore meditate upon Lord Shri
who
Krishna,
is eternally existent in the transcendental abode,
who is eternally existent in his transcendental abode,
which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world.
which is forever free from the illusory representation of the material
I
world.
meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
Dharma projita kaitravota,
Dharma pujita kaitavutra,
paramo nimatsranam satam,
Brahmo nirmashranam
vedyam
satam,
vastavam atravastu,
Vedyam vastavam astravastu,
shivadam tapatrayon mulanam,
Shivadam tapotroimulanam,
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite,
Shrimad Bhagavate
Kim va
Mahamuni
parir Ishwaraha,
Imva Parivishwaraha,
Sadyo Hridi Avarudyate Tra,
Sadyo Rudya Varidya Titra,
Kriti Behi Sususubistakshanat.
Pritibhi Shishushuvistatyanat.
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are material
This
motivated.
Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth,
This Bhagavata Puran propounds the highest truth,
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in
The
the
highest
heart.
truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
The highest truth of their reality is distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
Such truth uproots the threefold miseries.
Such a truth uproots the threefold misery.
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva's maturity
is sufficient in itself for God realization.
is sufficient self for God realization.
What is the need for any other scripture?
What is the need of the other scripture?
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
As soon as one attentive and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
by this culture of knowledge,
by this culture of
the
knowledge,
Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
the Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam,
Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam,
sukhamukad amrita dravya samyutam,
Sukamakadamita Dravasang
Pibata Bhagavatam Rasam Alayam.
Pibata Bhagavatam Rasam
Muhur
Alayam.
Ahoraska Bhuvibhavakaha.
Muhur Ahorasika Bhuvibhavakaha.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish
The
Srimad
mature
Bhagavatam.
fruit of the desire to read Vedic literature.
The mature fruit, the desired fruit, Vedic
It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
It emanated from the lips of Shukadeva.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more
Although
tasteful.
its nectarian juice was already relishable for
Although
all,
its nectarian juice was so relishable for all,
including liberated souls.
including liberated souls.
Shinvatam Swakata Krishna.
Shrivatam Swakata Krishna.
Punya Shravana Kirtana.
Punya Shravana Kirtana.
Hridyantak Stohi Bhadrani.
Hridyantak Yabhadrani.
Vidunoti Srihitsatam.
Vidunoti Suritsatam.
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures,
To hear about Krishna from the Vedic
or to
literatures,
hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
or to hear from it directly through the Bhagavad
is
Gita,
itself righteous activity.
it is self-righteous
And
activity.
for one who hears about Krishna,
And for one who hears about
Lord Krishna, who's dwelling in everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna is dwelling within everyone's
acts as
heart,
a best wishing friend
acts as the best wishing
and
friend,
purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
and purifies his body constantly engages in hearing him.
Nasta presu abhadresu
Nasta Preshwa Bhadreshu
nityam bhagavata sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Seva
bhagavati uttamasloke
Bhagavati Uttama
bhakti
Sloke
bhavati naistaki.
Bhakti Bhavati Naisti.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
In this way, the devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental
As he
knowledge.
hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavad
and from the devotees,
and from the
he
devotee,
becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
Tadarajastumo bhava
Tadarajastamo Bhava
kamalobadayasche
Kamalobhadayasya
cheta itaranabidam
Chaitaravidam
stipam sattve prasidati.
Tam Sarve Prasidati.
By development of devotional service,
By development of devotional
one
service,
becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance,
one becomes free from the modes of passion,
and thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
and as material lust and avarice are diminished.
Evam prasana manasu
Evam Prasanamana
bhagavat bhakti yogataha
Bhagavad Bhakti Yoga
bhagavat tattva vijnanam
Bhagavad Tattva Vijnana
sangasya jayate.
Mukta Sangha Sajayate.
When these impurities are wiped away,
When these impurities are wiped
the
away,
candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness,
the candidate remains steady in his position of
becomes
pure goodness,
enlivened by devotional service,
becomes enlivened by devotional
and
service,
understands the science of God perfectly.
and understands the science of God perfectly.
Vidyate hirdaya grantis,
Chidyate Udaya Granthi
chidyante sarvasamsaya,
Chidyante Sarvasamshaya
siyante chasya karmani,
Chidyante Chasa
krishna
Karmani
evatmanishware.
Sitam Sabde Prasidati.
Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection
That's the Bhakti Yoga service, the harness of the material affection,
and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram,
and enables us to come at once to the stage of Assumption Samagama,
understanding of the supreme absolute truth,
understanding of supreme absolute truth,
personality of God.
personality of Godhead.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotees in Krishna consciousness
can one understand the science of Krishna.
can one understand the science of Krishna.
Shri Guru Vastaka prayers. Guru Asaka prayers, yeah. The spiritual master is receiving benedicts from the ocean of mercy, just as the cloud pours water on the forest fire to extinguish it.
The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as a cloud pours water on the forest fire to extinguish
So
it.
the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence.
So the spiritual master delivers the material afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is an ocean of auspicious qualities.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is an ocean of auspicious qualities.
Chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments.
Chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical
The
instruments.
spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya
The
Mahaprabhu
spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan of the Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu,
because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind.
because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind.
Sometimes his hair stands on end.
Sometimes he stands on
He
end.
feels quivering in his body,
He feels quivering in his
and
body.
tears flow from his eyes like
And
waves.
tears flow from his eyes like waves.
From my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
Offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual
The
master.
spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Radha and
The
Krishna.
spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Radha and Krishna.
He also engages his disciples in such worship.
He also engages disciples in such worship.
They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments,
They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments,
clean their temple,
clean their temple,
and perform other similar worship of the Lord.
and perform other similar worship of the Lord.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
Offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual
The
master.
spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food,
The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food.
analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked.
Analyze that which is licked, chewed, drunk,
When the
and
spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavat Prasada,
when the spiritual master sees that the bodies are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasad,
he is satisfied.
he is
I
satisfied.
offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
Offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual
The
master.
spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava.
The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastime of Radhika and Madhava,
And their qualities, names, and forms.
and their qualities, names, and forms.
The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment.
The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every
I
moment.
offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
Offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert in assisting the gopis who at different times make different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavana.
The spiritual master is very eager because he is expert in tasting gopis at a different time, make different arrangements in conjugal affairs within the groves of Vrindavan.
I offer our most humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
Offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual
The
master.
spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servitor of the Lord.
The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servant of the
This is
Lord.
acknowledged in all revealed
This
scriptures
is
and
acknowledged in all revealed scriptures
followed by all authorities.
and followed by all authorities.
Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is a bona fide representative of Sri Hari Krishna.
Therefore, I offer my humble obeisance unto the Lord of such a spiritual master, who is a bona fide representative of Sri Hari Krishna.
By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna.
By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna.
Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement.
Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement.
Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master.
Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual
At least 3
master.
times a day, I should offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master.
At least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful obeisance unto the Lord's feet of my spiritual master.
Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchitananda Vigraha Nadiradir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam
Ishvara Parama Krishna Sakchirananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam
Chintamani Prakata Satmasakalpa Vriksha
Chintamani Prakadasalma Sukalpa Vriksha
Laksha Vrite Susrabhira Vipalayantam
Savikteshu Radira Vipalayantam
Lakshmi Sahasra Satasam Brahma Sevyamanam
Shasa Satasan Samasemanam
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Venam Kanantam Aravinda Dalayataksham
Venyum Kvanantam Aravinda Dayala Taksham
Parhavatam Samasitam Buddhasundar Rangam
Aravatam Samasitam Buddha Sundaram
Kandarpakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Strobham
Kandarpa Koti Kamaniya Vishesha Shobham
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Alola Chandra Kavasadvanamalya Vamsi
Alula Chandra Kalasarvanamalya Vamsi
Ratnam Gadam Pranayakela Keli Kalavilasam
Ranangadam Pranayakeli Kalavilasam
Shyamam Tribangalalita Niyata Prakasam
Syamam Tribhangalalitam Niyata Prakasham
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vrittimanti
Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vrittimanti
Pasyanti Panti Kalayanti Chiram Jaganti
Pasyanti Banti Kalayanti Chiram Jaganti
Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya
Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Advaitam Ajutam Anadim Anantarupam
Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam
Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha
Adyam Purana Purusham Navajauvanam Cha
Vede Sudurlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakto
Vedeshu Durlabham Adurlabham Atma Bhakto
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Pantastu Koti Satavatsara Sampragamyo
Pantastu Koti Shatavatsara Sampragamya
Vayoratapi Manaso Munipungamanam
Vayo Atapi Manaso Muni Pungavana
Sopyasti Yat Prapadasim Yavichintya Tatve
Sopyasti Yat Prapadasim Vikinjat State
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Ekopya Sora Chayatam Jagadanda Kotim
Ekopya Sora Chayitum Jagaranta Kuti
Yaschaktiras Asti Jagadanda Chaya Yadanta
Yakshakti Rashvi Jagananta Chaya Yadanta
Andantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam
Adantarasta Paramanu Chayantarashtam
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Yad Bhava Bhavita Diyo Manajastataiva
Yat Bhava Bhavita Diyo Manujastataiva
Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayanubhushaha
Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhusha
Suktaryameva Nikama Patitaistuvanti
Sukteriyam Eva Nidama Pantitaistu Panti
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 5, Text number 8. Etan me prichata sarvam
Tamne Prishta
sarvagya sakaleshwara viganihi yatai vedam
Jani Yatai Vedam
aham budhye anusasitaha.
Aham Buddhi Nushasita.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. My dear Father, you know everything, and you are the controller of all. Therefore, may all that I have inquired from you be kindly instructed to me, so that I may be able to understand it as your student. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The inquiries made by Narada Muni are very important for everyone concerned, and as such, Narada requested Brahmaji to deem them suitable, so that all others who may come in the line of disciplic succession of the Brahma Sampradaya may also know them properly without any difficulty. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So, the spiritual process is first and foremost to approach bona fide spiritual master. Without the help and counseling and hearing the Vedic literature, Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, from the lips of a bona fide spiritual master, it's not possible to make substantial spiritual progress. It's not possible. I was talking to someone yesterday who was trying to convince me that there's such a thing as the Bhagavad Gita Ramayana. So there might be something like that. So he's trying to convince me that it's much easier to understand that than the Bhagavad Gita. Now this, of course, is a foolish statement. And the Bhagavad Gita is the quintessential text of Vedic knowledge. It's short, only 700 verses. It's precise, and it has everything in it for understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. The scientific understanding of it. In other words, when it says scientific, again, let's understand this. It means that it is true everywhere, on this planet, on other planets, all throughout the universe. It's not only true in the United States or in the state of Washington, maybe not in the state of New York. No, it's true everywhere. And Prabhupada proved it by spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world. It's not that, oh, the Africans can't become Krishna conscious. They're not intelligent enough. No. They're just as intelligent as anyone else if they come in contact with a pure devotee. And if they don't, then there's no difference between the white American and the black African. They're both not intelligent because they can't figure out that what is the real purpose of human life. It's to become purified of sex desire, become purified of all false ego based on attachment to the temporary body and the extension of the body in the form of family and relatives and race and ethnicity and nationality, etc. So when we talk about science, it has to be true everywhere and verifiable everywhere. And it has to be consistent. It can't be, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. No. It has to be consistently effective everywhere and predictable. That's another thing about real science. It has to be predictable. There can't be any surprises where, oh, in this case, in this condition, under this temperature, it doesn't work. No. Everywhere, in all conditions, it has to be verifiable. That's a science. So that eliminates almost everything that the so-called mundane scientists have chronicled and so-called studied and understand. They don't understand hardly anything about material nature, although they claim to be experts about material nature. And they have very piecemeal knowledge. And most of their discoveries were done by accident. They were looking for one thing and they found something else. Now, they are pretty good at observation. Like, for example, and having some type of good guessing qualities based on very careful observation. But all their observations and all their theories are imperfect. And because of that, they're always changing their theories. Whereas there's nothing changed when in the science of Krishna. Every one of the statements in Bhagavad Gita have not changed in 5,000 years. And they're still as effective today as they were 5,000 years ago, and they'll be still as effective 5, 10, 50, 5 million years from now. Because this is science, real science, not junk science where they change their theory all the time, coming up with new theories. One theory doesn't work, they come up with another theory. That theory doesn't work, they come up with another theory. That is what we call imperfect, so-called science. But Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam are perfect science. Every statement in them is verifiable. Every statement in them is true in the past, in the present, and the future. If you don't believe me, then you ask me, give me examples of this, and I'll give you examples. Anyway, in the 10th chapter, 9th verse, Matchita Matkata Prana Bodhyantas Parasparam Katyantas Shamam Nityam Tushyanticha Ramanticha. And this verse, Prabhupada translates it, the thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. In the purport, Prabhupada says, pure devotees, whose characteristics are mentioned here, engage themselves fully in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Their minds cannot be diverted from the lotus feet of Krishna. Their talks are solely on the transcendental subjects. The symptoms of the pure devotees are described in this verse specifically. Devotees of the Supreme Lord are 24 hours daily engaged in glorifying the qualities and pastimes of the Supreme Lord. Their hearts and souls are constantly submerged in Krishna, and they take pleasure in discussing him with other devotees. That's the point. They take pleasure in discussing him with other devotees. That is what's going on here in this part of in this section of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 5, verse number 8. It says, my dear Father, you know everything. So Narada Muni is speaking to Brahma. And you are the controller of all. Therefore, may all that I have inquired from you be kindly instructed to me so that I may be able to understand it as your student. And therefore, the purport says, the inquiries made by Narada Muni are very important for everyone concerned. And as such, Narada requested Brahmaji to deem them suitable so that all others who may come in the line of disciplic succession of Brahma Sampradaya may know them properly without any difficulty. So now, what is he talking about here? Well, if we go back a couple of verses, you will see he's talking about his questioning of Brahma, and these questions are quintessential questions, or most important questions. He says in Canto 2, Chapter 5, verse number 2, he says, or text 1, he says, O Brahmaji, I beg to offer my respectful obeisance unto you. Please tell me that transcendental knowledge which specifically directs one to the truth of the individual soul and the supersoul. First question. Next question. My dear Father, please describe factually the symptoms of this manifested world. What is its background? How is it created? How is it conserved? And under whose control is all this being done? Question number 3. My dear Father, all this is known to you scientifically. Now, we just explained what it means when you use the word science or scientifically, right? It's verifiable at all times, past, present, and future, and in all places, everywhere, not only on this earth, but throughout the whole universe. That is real science, right? It is known to you scientifically because whatever was created in the past, whatever will be created in the future, or whatever is being created at present, as well as everything within the universe, is within your grip, just like a walnut. So you can't say anything more about what is science, right? It's present. It's true in the past, the present, the future, and it's present, and it's true everywhere. That is science. And then the next question, my dear Father, what is the source of your knowledge? Under whose protection are you standing? And under whom are you working? What is your real position? Do you alone create all entities with material elements by your personal energy? In other words, this is implying, this questioning by Narada is implying there must be someone greater than Brahma, although normally, if you ever met Brahma, you would think he is God himself, because he has such amazing powers. But Narada has detected that he got those powers from someone else. How did he detect that? The next verse says, As the spider very easily creates the network of its cobweb and manifests its power of creation without being defeated by others, so also you yourself, by employment of your self-sufficient energy, create without any other's help. Well, it looks like that, right? But now the next question is, whatever we can understand by the nomenclature, characteristics, and features of a particular thing, superior, inferior, or equal, eternal, or temporary, is not created from any source other than that of your Lordship, thou so great. So in other words, he's definitely saying that Brahma is manifesting some kind of self-sufficiency in the way he creates. But then the next verse hits the nail on the head, hits the hammer on the head of the nail. Yet we are moved to wonder about the existence of someone more powerful than you when we think of your great austerities in perfect discipline, although your good self is so powerful in the matter of creation. Now, what does this mean? Well, what he's implying here is that the Supreme is the Supreme. That means that the Supreme Personality of Godhead does not have to go through any process to attain knowledge, and his powers are infinitely great and unparalleled by anyone else. So he knows the history of Brahma. Brahma engaged in great austerities for 1,000 celestial years, which is millions and millions of our years, before he became enlightened on how to actually activate the material creation. Although the primary creation had been done already by Krishna. He created the material elements, the time factor, the modes of nature, all these things. But they were in a state of limbo. And then Brahma, when he was born mentally on the lotus flower grown from on the stem, coming from the abdomen of Garbhodaksha Vishnu, he only saw chaos. He did not see the organized universe. So he engaged in meditation after hearing the word tapa, spoken by, I think it was Saraswati. And therefore, he engaged in as it says here, great austerities, in perfect discipline. And after 1,000 celestial years, he heard the flute of Krishna, which communicated to him the knowledge on how to set into motion the material creation, although it had already been, the primary creation had already been taken place by Krishna. So, God does not have to go through any process to acquire knowledge. He's eternally knowledgeable, and he does not depend on anyone else. He is totally self-sufficient. Brahma had to go through austerity directed at pleasing the Lord and perfectly controlling his mind and senses for a very, very long time, and meditating on the Lord himself in order to attain the knowledge and power that he had. So God is always God, but the living entities, and Brahma is a living entity like you and me. He is a jiva. He is not God, but he has many powers that God has, up to 78% of the qualities of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is the destiny of every jiva. We have been dumbed down by modern education, thinking that we are so limited by birth, death, old age, and disease, by time factor, by lust, anger, greed, madness, envy, and illusion. And we think that we are limited by all these things, but actually our potential is we could all become a Brahma in the universe. And Brahma is actually a young Brahma. There are many other Brahmas with many more heads and much more intelligence and in much more complicated universes. That's a whole other subject. The material scientists can't even understand this universe. They can't even understand this planet. There's still plenty parts of this planet that have never been explored. Right? That's why they keep finding new species. They keep finding all kinds of things that they didn't know existed before. Like, for example, in the 14th and 15th century, there was no microscope. So there was no knowledge at all of microscopic living entities. Then around the 15th century, 16th century, the microscope came into, was made, and all of a sudden they discovered there's a whole other world, a microscopic world of bacteria and all kinds of living entities. They didn't know, you see, because our senses are very limited. And there's even more things that they can't see, like they never have seen an atom. They're just surmising what an atom is. So you have Niels Bohr, who came up with his atomic theory of electrons and neutrons and protons and all these things. But he never saw those. He surmised them by his observations. Although he never sees them, he understands there has to be something there because there are symptoms of it. So he came up with this atomic theory. But now Einstein came up with the quantum theory because they were not able to predict the movements of the atomic particles by Newton's laws of mechanics. So they came up with another theory called quantum theory. And they keep coming up with other theories about what are the fundamental elements of the material nature. So there's string theory, and this theory, and that theory, because they have never seen atomic particles. They've just seen the effects of atomic particles, you see. And smaller than the atom is the spirit soul, the jiva. And smaller than the jiva is Paramatma, the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the heart of every living entity and present in every atom of the universe. So we see their understanding of matter is very, very limited and sketchy. Yet they claim to be experts. But before they're able to completely understand the unified field theory, they die, like Einstein and so many others. They've understood some things, that energy can be transformed into matter and back again. That Einstein understood, and Maxwell and other great scientists have understood. But they don't know exactly how that happens. They're trying to reproduce it in this gigantic cyclotron on the Swiss border with France. And they've been doing this for years, and they're trying to find what's called the God particle. How energy is transformed into matter. E equals mc squared. So that was Einstein's great formulation. Now, by the way, what is it? What is scientific discovery? They're only analyzing things that already exist. They have not created anything. And they're analyzing things that already exist and have been put into place and are predictable by somebody else, a greater intelligence. If you read the basic, let's say, tenets of modern science, the first and foremost is that the universe functions in an orderly way. If the universe was not functioning in an orderly way, in a predictable way, just like they can predict when the sun rises in the summertime, in the fall, in the winter, in the spring, they can predict the movements of the planets. They can predict so many things because the universe is functioning in an orderly way. And all they do is discover things that already exist and are acting perfectly. perfectly synchronized. So they haven't actually created anything. They simply discover things. Just like Columbus discovered America. Does that mean Columbus created America? No. America was there long before. And by the way, other people came to America way before Columbus. Way, way before him. See? But he discovered it for the Europeans. He didn't really, it's not that he created it or he discovered it and he's the only person ever, the first person that discovered it. No, it's for the Europeans. So we have these misconceptions, and these misconceptions are taught in the school. How do they teach these things? They don't start from the beginning. They always start from the middle. Like, for example, we looked up how was the first amoeba created, right? So they skip over that. They go from after the first amoeba was created, then this happened, the second one was created, the third one, and all of a sudden it was a human being. It's all nonsense. Right? It's not science. Right? Okay. So, therefore it says, in the preliminary stage of devotional service, we're reading it from the 10th chapter, verse number 9. They relish the transcendental pleasure from the service itself. These are pure devotees. And in the mature stage, they're actually situated in love of God. Once situated in that transcendental position, they can relish the highest perfection which is exhibited by the Lord in his abode, meaning in the spiritual world. Lord Chaitanya likens transcendental devotional service to the sowing of a seed in the heart of the living entity. There are innumerable living entities traveling throughout different planets of the universe, and out of them there are a few who are fortunate enough to meet a pure devotee and get the chance to understand devotional service. In other words, without a pure devotee, spiritual master, and masters, Shiksha and Diksha gurus, it's impossible to understand anything about God or anything substantial about the material world. It is impossible. Simply reading books is not enough. You have to hear it from self-realized souls, and the most self-realized soul that we know is Srila Prabhupada. That's why we're reading his books, his translations, and his purports, which are the synthesis of all the previous acharyas and Krishna's, teaching. And yesterday I told this gentleman, I said, look, for you to understand something, you have to hear it from a bona fide spiritual master. You can't understand it simply by reading. You'll understand something. Just like if you see a shadow, you know that it has to be a real thing somewhere that's casting the shadow. But you will not understand the real thing simply by looking at the shadow. So simply reading Scripture is not enough. You have to hear it and ask questions from a bona fide spiritual master. Even if you know the answer, you still have to ask questions. So Narada Muni, he knew everything, but yet he was asking all these questions to Brahma. He wanted to hear it from Brahma, because Brahma obviously met Krishna or was in contact with Krishna and received from Krishna the original knowledge, and he simply passed it on to Narada, and Narada passed it on to Vyasa, and Vyasa to his disciples. So this passing on has to be perfect. In other words, there can't be any addition, there can't be any subtraction of the original words. And if someone is able to do that, they are a bona fide guru, because everything they say is exactly the same that Krishna spoke originally to Brahma. Okay. If you change one word, you are no longer bona fide. So a guru is a guru if he can repeat what Krishna has said without adulteration, without diminution or any type of let's say, misrepresentation of the original teaching. Okay, and that person is also a guru. So it says here that The Srimad Bhagavatam is also full of such narrations about the relationship between the Supreme Lord and his devotees. Therefore, the Srimad Bhagavatam is very dear to the devotees. As stated in Bhagavatam itself, 12, 13, 18, Srimad Bhagavatam Puranam Amalam Yad Vaishnavananam Priyam. In this narration, there is nothing about material activities. In other words, in Srimad Bhagavatam, which is what we're reading, and Bhagavad Gita, but Srimad Bhagavatam especially, there's nothing mundane. There's nothing about material activities, economic development, sense gratification, or liberation. Srimad Bhagavatam is the only narration in which the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord and his devotees is fully described. Thus, the realized souls in Krishna consciousness take continual pleasure in hearing such transcendental literatures, just as a young boy and girl take pleasure in association. So when a young boy sees a young girl, and he's a handsome young boy, she's a pretty young girl, there's immediate attraction. And they take great pleasure in talking with each other. Well, it's the same thing for devotees. When they meet another devotee and they both begin to speak about Krishna, it is a source of transcendental pleasure, and they're attracted both to Krishna, so much so that they have a bond that is between them that is unbreakable, because every time they meet, they speak about Krishna and remember his transcendental pastimes. And this is what the gopis are doing. When they're separated from Krishna physically, they're always talking about Krishna and reenacting his pastimes, and always like in a solid bond with the Lord. Therefore, he never leaves them, because they never let go of him. You see. Okay, so coming back to what we're reading, what we just read were the questions that Narada Muni asked Brahma. And we should take note of these questions. These are the questions we should be asking if we meet a bona fide spiritual master. And a spiritual master is bona fide if he's able to answer these questions. So then it says in the Canto 2, Chapter 8, verse number 1, where it says, King Parikshit inquired from Sukadeva Goswami, how did Narada Muni, whose hearers are as fortunate as those instructed by Lord Brahma, explain the transcendental qualities of a Lord who is without material qualities, and before whom did he speak? So again, now King Parikshit is asking questions from Sukadeva Goswami, right? And he wants to know how Narada Muni heard instructions from Brahma and other disciples of Brahma. And he wants to hear about the transcendental qualities of the Lord, who is without material qualities, but who has spiritual qualities. And before whom did he speak? Okay. So, Devarshi Narada was directly instructed by Brahmaji, who was also directly instructed by the Supreme Lord. Therefore, the instruction imparted by Narada to his various disciples are as good as those of the Supreme Lord, because they don't change anything. They don't change one word. That is the way of understanding Vedic knowledge. It comes down from the Lord by disciplic succession, and this transcendental knowledge is distributed to the world by this descending process. There is no chance, however, to receive Vedic knowledge from mental speculators. Therefore, wherever Narada Muni goes, he represents himself as authorized by the Lord, and his appearance is as good as that of the Supreme Lord, because he doesn't change one word that he heard from Brahma, and Brahma doesn't change one word that he heard from Krishna. Therefore, you are getting the same message that Brahma got originally from Krishna. Similarly, the disciplic succession, which strictly follows the transcendental instruction originally given by Krishna, is the bona fide chain of disciplic succession, and the test for such bona fide spiritual masters is that there should be no difference between the instruction of the Lord originally imparted to his devotee and that which is imparted by the authority in the line of disciplic succession. So the present Guru must relate or explain exactly in the same way that Krishna explained to Brahma, and Brahma explained to Narada, and Narada explained to Vyasa, and Vyasa explained to his disciples, coming down to Lord Chaitanya, and then to the six Goswamis, and then to Madhavendra Puri, and keep going to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and then Srila Prabhupada. It has to be exactly the same. Then the present Guru is also qualified. How Narada distributed the transcendental knowledge of the Lord will be explained in later cantos. It will appear that the Lord existed prior to the material creation, and therefore his transcendental name, quality, etc. do not represent any material quality. Whenever, therefore, the Lord is described as aguna, or without any quality, it does not mean he has no qualities, but that he has no material quality, such as the mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance, as the conditioned souls have. He is transcendental to all material conceptions, and thus he is described as aguna. Okay, so that's... then next we have the second chapter, 9th verse, second canto, 9th chapter, and the 37th verse. O Brahma, just follow this conclusion by fixed concentration of mind, and no pride will disturb you, neither in the partial nor in the final devastation. So this is instruction to Brahma by Krishna. And in the purport it says, as in the Bhagavad Gita 10th chapter, the personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, has summarized the whole text in 4 verses, namely, Aham Sarvasya Prabhava, etc. So the complete Srimad Bhagavatam has also been summarized in 4 verses as Aham Eva Sam Evagre, etc. Thus, the secret purpose of the most important Bhagavatite conclusion has been explained by the original speaker of the Srimad Bhagavatam, who was also the original speaker of the Bhagavad Gita, the personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna. So the Bhagavad Gita is summarized in 4 verses, 10th chapter, verses 8 to 11, and summarized in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 9, and the verse says, let's see, where is that? 33, 34, 30, 32, 33, 34, and 35. Okay? So those are called the nutshell verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Around these 4 nutshell verses, the whole Bhagavatam is expanded. And the 4 nutshell verses of Bhagavad Gita, the whole Bhagavad Gita is expanded from those 4 verses. Okay? So then it says that Krishna is the original speaker of this knowledge to Brahma. There are many grammarians and non-devotee material wranglers who have tried to present false interpretations of these 4 verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam, but the Lord himself advised Brahmaji not to be deviated from the fixed conclusion of the Lord had taught him. The Lord was the teacher of the nucleus of Srimad Bhagavatam in 4 verses, and Brahma was the receiver of the knowledge. Misinterpretation of the word aham by the word jugglery of the impersonalists, aham meaning I, meaning Krishna says, aham sarvasya prabhava, matak sarvam pravartate, iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. He says, I am the source of everything, aham, I am the source of everything material and spiritual. That means he's God, the Supreme Godhead. And there's only one Supreme Personality of Godhead, not many. Misinterpretation of the word aham, I, by the word jugglery of the impersonalist should not disturb the mind of the strict followers of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is the text of the Personality of Godhead and his unalloyed devotees, who are also known as Bhagavatas, and any outsider should have no access to this confidential literature of devotional service. So no outsiders, no people who speculate have any approach to this knowledge, nor any validity in any books that they write. So there are so many people that have made so many false interpretations of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. And here, Krishna is warning or cautioning Brahma, this will happen in the future, so don't you be tricked. Don't you be tricked by these speculators and these wranglers. Look up the word wrangler, W-R-A-N-G-L-E-R. It's almost a slang word in English. It's not really slang, but it was at one time, I think. What's it? A person engaged in?
A person engaging in a
lengthy and complicated.
quarrel or dispute.
Yeah, so they're engaging in lengthy speculation to prove that aham is not referring to Krishna. Therefore, in the Bible also it has, I am that I am. Right? It's a famous line from the Bible. What does that mean? It means there's only one God. The Supreme is the Supreme. God is God, always. It's not that he became God by some process. Right? So this I am that I am, that means that there's only one Supreme Personality of Godhead. No one else is equal to him or in any way can surpass him. Everyone is subordinate. But the Mayavadis, the impersonalist speculators, they take every word and try and find secondary, tertiary, quaternary interpretations of that word. And they use those sub-meanings of the word to create their misinterpretations. Just like in English, you have two words that are spelled the same, but they're pronounced differently. For example, minute and minute. So someone that doesn't know English, like the one time I was speaking with this Iranian devotee, and he said, can you wait 1 minute? I said, what? He said, can you wait 1 minute? See, he doesn't know English, right? Because English can be very confusing because there are words that are spelled exactly the same but have different pronunciations and different meanings. So I had to correct her. I said, there's no such thing, can you wait 1 minute? I said, minute is the correct pronunciation is 1 minute. But it's spelled the same. Minute means something short or little, and minute means a period of time. See, he didn't know that. He thought he knew English. In the same way, the Mayavadis will interpret words and give obscure meanings to make misinterpretations of the Shastra. Therefore, you have to hear it from a pure devotee. Like this person, this Iranian, he would have kept on saying, can you wait 1 minute? Until he met me and I had to correct him. He had no idea that there's minute and minute, although they're spelled exactly the same. You see? That's why you have to have a living, pure devotee explain these things. Otherwise, very easily we can be misled. And in Sanskrit is more complicated than English because you have this euphemistic uses in Sanskrit where for euphemism, for sweeter pronunciation, they eliminate certain letters in words, and it's like a conjunction of words. And there's a science of how to make the conjunction and how to break it apart. Whereas the Mayavadis, they break it apart in an illicit way to come up with false meanings so they can misinterpret the Shastra. Now, this is a science of linguistics. Very few people understand it. But the Mayavadis are expert in breaking up those euphemistic connections of usually consonants. In other words, they'll eliminate a vowel and bring two consonants together. Okay. Like, for example, in this verse we read today. Yeah, it says, Aham budye nusasitaha. Well, the word nusasita is actually anusasita, but the A has been taken out for euphemism. Euphemism means for sweeter pronunciation, right? And what happens, they connect the two words, budye nusasita, instead of budye anusasita. So when there's two vowels, the end of the previous word and the first letter of the next word, they'll eliminate the second vowel for euphemism. So you say budye nusasita instead of budye anusasita. That's right? That's the verse today. So there's a way of conjugating two words together for euphemism, and there's a way of separating it. The Mayavadis take advantage of that and separate things incorrectly, purposely, to come up with different meanings. Okay, so I'm going to stop there because I'm not going to be able to finish this. I'm going to finish it tomorrow. Are there any questions? Okay, speak in the microphone. Speak in the microphone.
I think it's in the 254 or something where he compares with the spider web.
Yeah, that is 255.
Yeah, 255. So here, as the spider very easily creates the network of its cobweb and manifests its power of creation without being defeated by others.
In other words, without being dependent on others. The spider expands his saliva and makes his web. That's why the web is sticky. It comes from his saliva. And then he can also reabsorb the entire web into his body. So a spider looks like it is completely self-sufficient. It doesn't need the help of any other living entity to make its web. And it can also expand the web and reabsorb it into his body.
Okay, so in this case the word without being defeated means without being dependent on others.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, so if you look at the Sanskrit, it says Atma Saktim. Atma Saktim means self-sufficient. Now, in Hindi, people use the word Shakta, right?
Yes,
It means capable.
Capable, energy.
Huh? Shakti, yeah. No, they say Shakta.
The one who has the energy is Shakti.
Yeah, one who has the energy. It comes from this word. Shaktim means self-sufficient. He has the energy to do something on his own, right? Or he has the possibility of doing something on his own. Well, that's the word right there. Shaktim means self-sufficient.
Okay.
Power, means self-sufficient power. So you see how Hindi is very related to Sanskrit, right? So is also many other languages. Telugu also, Bengali, very much so. Gujarati also. You know, all those languages are related to Sanskrit. Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify what's the interpretation of without being defeated by others, but I think when we go to the Sanskrit,
Without being dependent.
it said without being defeated by others.
Yeah, but it means without being dependent. So defeated would mean he has to depend on someone else to do what he's doing, but he's not.
Right.
It's all self-sufficient power. Haribol. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai.